This conference will now be recorded.
So now let's see the continuation of the trigger context variables. So that already we have discussed, whenever I'm going to be creating the trigger, the single trigger can able to fire on multiple events. Okay, a single trigger can able to fire on multiple events. On the multiple events, you can fire the trigger at that time. In each and every event, I want to perform some different operations. So that all the events code we can write inside a single trigger, but at that time, how can we segregate that code? How can we inform the trigger this is the piece of code which has to be executed on before insert event? This is the piece of code which has to be executed on after insert event. This is the piece of code which has to be executed on before delete event. Then how can we indicate that we have discussed with the help of the trigger context? So now let's see how can we use this trigger context variables to segregate that piece of code. Now let's see practically here. Then what each and every trigger context variable indicates. Now let's see. Now, as part of trigger context variables, we have 10 trigger context variables. Trigger dot is insert, trigger dot is update, is delete, is undelete, is before, is after, trigger dot old, trigger dot new, trigger dot new map, trigger dot old map. These are the 10 trigger context variables available in Salesforce. Now let's see each and every context variable one by one. Okay, now the first one. The first context variable is trigger dot is insert, which will be returning the value of type boolean. That means what? What it returns basically? True or false. Now when it will returns true, when it will returns false.
When inserting that type is true.
Okay. That means what? Whenever the trigger has been fired, whenever the trigger has been fired, I want to know the current status. That means why the trigger has been fired? Because of what event? Because of what event trigger has been fired? It's because of insert, because of update, because of delete, because of undelete, or what? Why the trigger has been fired? I want to know. I want to get the current status of a trigger. What exactly the context of my trigger right now? I want to know. For that reason, we are using the trigger context. By using the trigger context variable, we can identify the current status of the trigger. Based on the current status, we can inform to the trigger, this is the piece of code, please execute this. In this current context, please execute this piece of code. To indicate that we are using the trigger context variable. Context is used to get the current status of the trigger, what the trigger is doing right now. Trigger has been fired or not? If yes, why the trigger has been fired? Because of what event? Because of insert operation? If yes, then what the trigger is doing right now? It is about to insert the record is already inserted. I want to know. So for that reason here, to know the current status of the trigger, we are using this trigger context variables. So now in this case, as part of this trigger context variables, the first trigger context is trigger dot is insert. Okay, now this trigger dot is inserted a context variable which returns true if the trigger has been fired because of an insert operation. Okay, if the trigger has been fired because of an insert operation, it returns true, or else it will returns false. Because I already told you, trigger can be fired on any event. It may be before insert, it may be after insert, before update, after update, before delete, after delete, undelete. That means these are the various events on which the trigger can able to fire. So in this case, because of which operation trigger has been fired? Because of insert operation, or update operation, or delete operation, or undelete operation. Why the trigger has been fired? I want to know. In order to know that, we are using the trigger context. So this trigger dot is insert. If the trigger has been fired because of an insert event, it returns true, or else it will return false. Okay, that means that just we are knowing that why the trigger has been fired because of what event, because of insert or not. That's it. If it is yes, that means because of insert operation, trigger has been fired. So that what operation you want to do, you can perform those operations by writing your own business logic inside this. Okay, now make a note of this one. It returns true if the trigger has been fired because of an insert operation. It returns true if the trigger has been fired because of insert operation. Else, it returns false. Else, it returns false. Just if you want to know whether trigger has been fired because of insert or not, we are using that context variable called as trigger dot is insert. Next, the similar manner. If the trigger has been fired because of an update operation, then how do we know? For that, we are having one more context variable, trigger dot is update. So now trigger dot is update is a context variable which returns that value in the form of a Boolean parameter that is either true or false. If the trigger has been fired because of an update operation, then it returns true or else it returns false. Okay, now make a note of this one. It returns true if the trigger has been fired because of an update operation. Else it returns false. Next one. The third context variable, trigger dot is delete. Then what it means now? It returns true when, it returns false when. Okay. So the trigger has been fired because of a delete operation. That means upon deleting the record, it may be before, after, whatever. I'm not bothered about that. Just I'm deleting the record. Upon deleting the record, if the trigger has been fired, then it will returns true, or else it will returns false. Okay. Now it returns true if the trigger has been fired because of a delete operation. Else it returns false. Next, the fourth context variable, trigger dot is undelete. That means what? If the trigger has been fired because of an undelete operation, that means I'm restoring the record back to the actual object. At that time, if the trigger has been fired, then I would like to get that context. So that here, if the trigger has been fired, whenever you are restoring the record back to the actual object, it returns true, or else it will return false. Now, it returns true if the trigger has been fired upon restoring the record back to the actual object. Else, it returns false. That means as of now, just we have identified why the trigger has been fired, because of which event, because of insert, because of update, because of delete, because of undelete. Now, let's go in detail. What the trigger is doing right now? It is about to perform the operation, or operation is already done. To know that, we are having two more context variables. Done with this? Now, the fifth one. Trigger dart is before. That means what? Before? Before performing the operation. It may be insert, it may be update, it may be delete, it may be undelete, whatever. Anything. It returns false. Okay. Now that means what? As of now, we have identified. Okay, why the trigger has been fired? Because of what event? Because of insert or update or delete or undelete. So now the trigger has been fired. What the trigger is doing right now? It is about to perform the operation. Our operation is already done. To know that current state, okay? To know that current state, we are going to be using that. The two more context variable trigger dot is before. That means if the trigger is about to perform the operation, that may be insertion or updation, deletion, whatever. I'm not bothered about that. Simply I want to know it is about or not. That means you are about to perform the operation or not. You are going to perform the operation or not. I want to know. So for that reason, we are using the trigger dot is before. By using this trigger dot is before, we can verify whether the trigger is about to perform the operation or it is already done with the operation. Okay, to know that. Suppose the trigger is going to perform the operation, then it returns true, or else it will return false. Okay, so now is before, that means trigger is going to be performing the operation. Okay, still it is before, that means it is not yet started the operation, it is about to start the operation. Okay, now make a note of this one. It returns true if the trigger is about to perform the operation, else it returns false. Next is after. What it means? Operation is already performed, right? That means what? If the trigger is already done with the operation, then in order to know that status, we are using after is after. It returns true if the trigger has been done with the operation, else it returns false. Okay, so these are the 6 context variable which is used to know the current status of the trigger. Okay, let's see how can we use this 6 context variable to segregate the code, okay, based on the trigger. For example, so let's come to a situation. So that yesterday we have discussed about a scenario, okay, a small scenario, where I would like to copy the record from lead object to prospect object. Okay, lead object to prospect object. Once the lead record has been created successfully inside my lead object, I would like to copy the record into my prospect object. Okay, and then I want to send the email notification to the lead record owner. Okay, to the lead owner, I want to send the notification. So now let me explain that requirement here. Then how can we write that code? Okay, you have to tell me now. Okay. So let me take that scenario. So let me take that requirement again. I'm having this two objects right now. So these are the two objects that I have. First one is the lead object. Second one is the prospect object. So these are the two objects are available right now with me. These two objects are having some relation. Okay, there is a relation is available between these two objects. I have mapped association from prospect to lead. Okay, there is a relation where it is indicating the lead object is a parent object and the prospect object is a child object. So which is a lookup relationship. Okay. I have mapped the lookup association. Both the tables are having the same structure, okay, same columns. Whatever the columns are there inside my lead object with the similar names, with the similar data types, I have created the columns inside my lead prospect object. So both are having same structure. Okay, same columns are there, same data types are available. Now, as part of my requirement, okay, as part of my requirement, okay, as part of my requirement. Now, as part of my requirement, the first one is upon creating the lead record inside the lead object, okay, I need to make sure the email field, phone field, and then the city field I would like to make it as mandatory. Okay, now. While creating the lead record, make the below fields mandatory. Below fields required. The first one is email field. Second one is phone field. And the third one is city field. Okay. This is the first requirement here. Second requirement, as part of the requirement 2. Copy the lead record into the prospect. Copy the lead record into the prospect object. When if the lead record has been inserted successfully, then immediately I would like to copy that lead record into my prospect. Third one. Send the email notification to the lead owner once the lead record has been copied successfully. Once the lead record has been copied successfully. Once the lead record has been copied successfully into my prospect, then I want to send the email notification to that lead owner. So now the lead record has been created successfully, it has been copied successfully. Okay, this is my requirement. Now tell me how to create the trigger and what object and what events we need to specify, how to write the code, what is the order. Now tell me. We need to create the trigger on what? Lead object. Okay. Now tell me the syntax. Okay. Okay. Trigger. Lead trigger. Okay. Lead object. Now tell me what are the events. Why before insert? For the requirement one, okay, to validate the data. Next. After insert. Next. What is the other code you want to execute now? First of all, what needs to be done? In the before insert, what piece of code you want to execute now? That means I need to make those fields mandatory. Okay, we need to make those fields mandatory. So that we need to write the validation code. We need to write the validation code first, and then next, what is the next code? Suppose record has been created successfully. Copy the lead into project. Next, send the email alert to lead owner. Now this is the order. Now tell me. So now from this tree, okay, from this business logic, which piece of business logic you want to execute on before insert? First one. The validation code I want to execute in before insert. The remaining two business logics I want to execute when after insert. That means once a record has been created successfully, after inserting the record, I want to copy the lead record into the prospect, and then I want to send the email notification to the lead. Now tell me here, how can we inform to the trigger? So this is the piece of code. Please execute it when the trigger has been filed on before insert event. And this is the piece of code which has to be executed on once the trigger has been filed because of after insert event. Context variable. Now tell me. Then tell me. How do you know trigger has been filed because of insert event or not? Okay, if trigger dot is insert. Next. Then trigger dot is insert. Now that means trigger has been filed because of insert operation. Now in this case, what happened? Here also we are having two events are there. Now before insert I want to do some different operation. After insert I want to do some different operation. Then what we can do now? How can we identify whether the trigger is about to do the operation or already done with the operation? Trigger dot is insert, and then after that what we can do? And trigger dot is before. Okay, trigger dot is insert and trigger dot is before. That means if the trigger has been filed because of an insert event, and that too the trigger is about to perform the operation, that means before still, then what piece of code you want to execute? Validation code. Okay. Now next one. If the trigger has been filed because of after insert event, then how can we write the code? If trigger dot is insert, trigger dot is okay. In this case, I want to execute. That means what? Multiple events code I'm writing inside a single trigger, right? Yes. So that you have no need to write the separate trigger for each and every event. Okay, we can able to combine all the events code inside a single trigger, and then we can segregate the piece of code with the help of the trigger context variables. So now we need to indicate that. Okay, trigger dot is insert and trigger dot is before. That means if the trigger has been filed because of an insert event, that too the trigger is about to perform the operation. That means before insert. So please execute the validation code to validate the lead record's information to maintain the email and the phone and the city value as required. Suppose if the trigger is already done with the operation, then to verify that trigger dot is insert, that means trigger has been filed because of insert operation. And then that too trigger is after. Is after means what? Trigger is already done with the operation. So that means after insert. So I want to execute this piece of code. So please execute that. Copy that record from the lead to prospect and then send email notification to the lead owner. So in this case, even though we are writing the multiple events code inside a single trigger, we can split that code to the various small pieces of the blocks with the help of trigger context variables. Okay? Clear? Now, here one more scenario. Generally, whenever you are validating the data, okay, validations has to be get performed when Before in the sense what? Before insert, before update, before delete. When? Before insert and before update also. Validation rules are always firing on before insert as well as before update also. Okay. So in this case, I am adding that event also here. Before update. Now tell me. Before update also, I want to do the validation. What we can do? Can I write like this? Before update. That means trigger has been fired because of update operation or not, and that two trigger is about to update the record before update. Can I write? Okay. So now we can able to write this code like this also, but here it will be having the same piece of code. Here also same code, here also same code. That already you know that we can't create the duplicate code inside the application because Salesforce is keep on counting the number of characters. So that here don't write the duplicate code. Okay, make that code reusable, make that code generic. So in this case, what we can do now? Okay, now we can specify this one. I'm indicating. Okay, trigger dot. Okay, insert and before. That means here before insert, then trigger dot before update. In this case, here I'm going to be executing that same piece of code. If the condition is true or any changes now. Now this is the one. Either before insert or before update. In both the cases, I want to execute same piece of code. Okay, clear? Now, any more optimizations? For example, here we are writing the code like this generally. Okay, I'm writing the 2 into 3 plus 2 into 7. Then what we can do? We can able to make it as common. 2 into what we can do? 3 plus 7. Okay. So in this case, you will be getting the same result. Here also 6 plus 14, you will be having 20. Here also 20, same. So in this case, whatever the common things are available, we are making it as separate here. Like in this case, what we observed here, we are having is insert, is update. Here we are having is before. Okay. Here also is before. This is a common thing. How can we make it separate now? Okay. Trigger dot is insert. Or trigger dot is update. Then and trigger dot. Okay. Understood this one condition? That means what? What it means here? Either before insert. That means this is common. Okay, this is common here. From this to any one of that. That means either before insert or before update. Okay, clear? So whenever if you want to execute some piece of code for the multiple events, we have to write the conditions like this. Okay. So in this case, whenever we are going to be writing the code, okay, no need to create the separate triggers for each and every event. We can able to write the multiple events code inside a single trigger itself. Okay, in a single trigger itself, the possibility is available to you, and at that time we can split the code to the multiple pieces of blocks by using the trigger context variables. Okay. Now, suppose here you can raise the question. So if I'm writing the code in the multiple trigger, then what is the problem in this? If I'm writing the code in the multiple triggers, then what is the problem? Yesterday we have discussed order of execution. Okay, order of execution problem. That means what? If you're having two triggers are available on the same object which are having the same event, at that time, which trigger will execute first, which trigger will execute next, we can't decide. There is no such possibility. The two, we don't have any priorities concept in Salesforce. We don't have any synchronization concepts in Salesforce. Okay, to maintain only one trigger has to be executed once. So for that reason, we don't have any controlling execution orders in Salesforce. So that always don't create the multiple triggers. Please maintain only one trigger per an object here. So that inside a single trigger, we can able to write all the events code by segregating the code with the help of the various trigger context variables. Okay. Clear? Understood the concept now? So this is the first step. Okay, this is the first step which we have to do. Okay, as part of writing the trigger. As the first step, we have to prepare the trigger, and then we have to write the trigger context first. Okay, then only we can be able to write that. Okay, some more code. Here we are involving one more step also to see the concept as part of bulkification of triggers concept. Okay, understood this one up to now? Now make a note. Upon creating the triggers, always we have to maintain only one trigger for an object. It's a best practice, it's not a rule, it's a best practice. You may follow, you may not follow, no problem. Okay, it's a best practice. Okay, always we have to maintain only one trigger for an object. Now, I'm giving that note line here. If the object contains multiple triggers with the same events, then we can't control the execution order of the trigger. We can't control the execution order of the triggers. So that here we can maintain only one trigger. Inside a single trigger, we can write all the events code by segregating with the help of trigger context variables. For example, I'm indicating if I'm adding one more event here, then we can write one more event. Okay. Done? Done with these points? Now. Now let's see the next context variable. It's a bit lengthy topic. Now let's see. So now let's see what exactly the trigger that new context variable, what it contains, and then what is the return type of this trigger context variable. Now let's see practical. Okay. So let me explain with a practical. For example, I have an object. That is my account object. I'm having an account object. In this account object, I'm having few fields, like as the ID field, name field, the rating field, and the industry field. These are the 4 fields. So this is my account object. I'm having 4 fields inside. ID, name, rating, industry. These are the 4 fields. Now tell me, by default, which field is the mandatory field in this account object? Name field. Okay, name is a mandatory field, remaining fields are optional. Okay. So now in this case, now my requirement is I want to make this industry field also mandatory. Okay, I want to make this industry field also mandatory. Okay, with the help of trigger. Okay, because it is a standard field which has been given by Salesforce. We can go to the page layout customization. Through that, we can able to make that field mandatory also. Through validation tools also, we can make it as mandatory. But I want to go with the trigger. That already told you in our starting classes, okay, in our starting classes of fields and their properties, I already told you in order to make the field required, we have 4 ways. First one, we can able to select the required checkbox upon creating the field. Second one, page layout customization. Third one, validation rules. All these 3 we have discussed. Now fourth one, triggers. Now we are going to discuss. Okay, the fourth one is triggers. Through triggers, we can able to make that field required. So in this case, I would like to create a trigger. So now I'm preparing the trigger right now. Okay. I'm creating a trigger which will be sitting on top of my object. Okay, I'm preparing a trigger right now. So this is my trigger. I'm having a trigger. So now which has been assigned on my account object, okay, which has been assigned on my account object. Okay. So I'm having a trigger, okay, in front of my object. Whenever the user is trying to be creating the record inside the object, every record has to pass through the trigger only. Okay, so it can't escape. Okay, so that every record has to pass through the trigger itself. So I have prepared a trigger. Now this trigger is going to be firing on before insert, because upon creating the record, if you want to do anything, if you want to validate anything, we have to write insert that before insert. So that here I'm preparing the trigger on before insert event. I'm placing the trigger here. I'm indicating the event as before insert. So now my trigger is going to be firing on before insert event. Okay, my trigger will get fired on before insert event. So upon creating the trigger, okay, I have indicated that please fire this trigger on before insert event in order to validate whether this record is holding this industry field value or not. To validate that information, I have written some business logic also over here. Okay, I have written some business logic. I have written some business logic. I have written some business logic in order to validate whether this record will be having the industry field value or not. Okay, there is some business logic. So now completely my object is protected now with the help of a trigger. Whenever the user wants to create a record, it may be through page layout, it may be through Apex programming, data loader, integration, import wizard, anything, whatever the way you can use, ultimately it has to reach the trigger, it has to pass through the trigger only. Okay, now. So now this is my trigger. Okay, now my setup is ready to protect my object from the unimportant records here which are not having industry field values. What are the records are available which you are trying to insert? Those records should have mandatorily industry field values. If the record is having industry value, then only record will be acceptable into my object, or else it won't be acceptable. So the business logic I have written inside my trigger here. Okay, now today I'm creating a record right now. I'm creating a record. Okay, I'm creating a record. Now the record name is Samrat Kumar. Rating value heart, industry some bank. Do I need to supply name ID value? ID will be generating by whom? Auto. It's not auto number here. Salesforce is generating this ID automatically. Okay. Now, so in this case, I'm trying to be inserting the records. Now today I'm trying to be inserting this record into my object. So this is the record I'm trying to insert into my object right now. Okay. This is the record I'm trying to insert into my object right now. I'm inserting the record. So now whenever you are trying to be inserting the record inside that object, okay, will the trigger will allow you to insert the record directly, or what it will do? How it will validate? Where it will validate? Magic tables. That means what here? What are the record you are trying to be creating new? Okay, whenever you are trying to be inserting the record into that object, so now whenever it is reaching the trigger won't allow you to insert the record directly. It has to validate. To validate that it is having some business logic with them, so that whatever the record you are trying to insert, that record is going to be moving into a temporary place. Okay, that record is going to be moving into a temporary place. Okay, is a temporary place. Whatever the record you are trying to insert, the record is going to moving into the temporary place. This is the record. I'm trying to insert. This record is going to be moving into the temporary place. The trigger is going to be moving the record into the temporary. Directly, it won't allow you to insert the record. Whatever the record you are trying to insert, the record is going to be moving into the temporary place. This record will be moving into the temporary place. It will move the record. So now this is nothing but your context variable. This is nothing but your trigger context. Okay, that is called as in the database. This is called as magic table. In that magic table, your record will be getting researched inside. Now, how many records are available here? One record is available. Now, sometimes can I create multiple records? Yes. Okay. Now, for example, I am creating multiple records also in some cases. Not only inserting one record, we can able to insert the multiple records also inside the object. There is a possibility. There is a possibility to insert the multiple records also inside that object also. I'm creating one more record. Constellation. Rating value of 1. I'm not passing the industry value. I'm not passing the industry value. Simply I'm passing the name of the record and the rating. Whenever you are trying to be inserting this record into the object by maintaining in the form of a collection, what are the two records you are trying to insert? Both the records are going to be placing inside the temporary memory. Okay, what are the both the records are available? Both the records are going to be placing inside a temporary memory. In order to hold the multiple records, what we need generally? Collection. Okay, we need a collection. What type of collection? List collection. Okay, list collection. Okay, we need a list collection. List of what object is that? By account. Because trigger is on account object. So that is using. So it is going to be having that list collection, which is holding a list collection, which will be holding the list of account records which you are trying to insert into that object. Once the records are available inside this temporary memory or the trigger context, now whatever the business logic that you have prepared, that business logic is going to be applying on these records. Okay. Whatever the business logic that you have prepared, it will apply the business logic on each and every record by iterating the record from the collection automatically by default by using the enhancer function. So it will apply the business logic here. Apply the business logic. So whatever the business logic that you have written, the business logic is going to be getting applying on each and every record which you are trying to insert. So now here if the business logic is satisfied, that means all the records are meeting this criteria, okay, all the records are meeting this criteria, then only Salesforce is going to be allowing you to insert the record into that object. Okay. If all the records are meeting the criteria, okay, then only the records will be allowing you to insert into that object automatically. Okay. The records will be getting inserted when if the conditions are met, that means conditions are satisfied. Okay. Now, conditions are met. Conditions are satisfied. If all the specified conditions are satisfied, then only record will be inserted into your object. If any of the condition has been failed, if any of the record has been failed, then what it will do here? Whole transaction will be getting rolled back. So now it is going to be roll back the transaction automatically by default. Okay. Now in this case, it will roll back the transaction. It will roll back the transaction. When if the condition has been failed. So at that time, it is verifying this one. Now in this case, it will verify if the condition has been failed, it is going to roll back the transaction. If the conditions are failed. If the conditions are failed, it will roll back the transaction automatically. This is the execution life cycle of your trigger. Okay. In this case, what are the records you are trying to insert newly? Okay. What are the records you are trying to insert newly? To hold this new record, not only one multiple record, to hold this new record, it is going to be maintaining a collection. This collection is called as trigger.new. It is called as trigger.new. Then what do you mean by trigger.new? Trigger.new is a context variable. What type of context it is? List collection. List of what? Account. Why account? Trigger is on account object. So that trigger.new is a list collection which holds the current context record. Current context means what? Whatever the new records you are trying to insert, those new records are going to be holding inside the list collection, okay, which is called as the trigger.new. Okay, trigger.new is a list collection which will be holding the current context record inside your object. Clear? Understood the concept? Whenever you are going to be inserting some new records into the object, all those new records are going to be storing inside a context variable called as trigger.new. Okay? Clear? Now, applying the business logic on what records now. Business logic will be applied on what record? My account records. Where is my account records? Inside my trigger.new. Business logic will apply where? In this place. So where the records are there in the trigger.new. So we have to iterate this collection from starting to ending apply the business logic. Okay? Clear? Understood the concept now here? So now whenever I'm going to be inserting some new records inside that object, then the trigger will not be allowing it to insert the record directly. First of all, to move the records to the temporary place, so that it can able to do the validation. Now you have to hold this record for some time. It is using a context variable called as trigger.new. Because this is the insert operation, records are not having any IDs. So this is the trigger.new list collection. This is the list collection. Okay. So in this case, trigger.new is the list collection which will be holding the current context records which you are trying to insert into that object. So once the records have been placed inside this trigger.new, okay, from there it will be iterating each and every record by using the enhanced for loop one by one, and it will apply the business logic. If all the records are satisfying the business logic, then only the record will be accepting into the object. If any of the record has been failed, it will be cancelling the whole transaction automatically by default. Okay, clear? Now. So now this is the way the trigger is going to be executing internally. So that trigger.new is what? Trigger.new is a list collection which will be holding current context records. Whatever the records you are trying to inserting into the object newly, those records will be holding inside the trigger.new context. Okay? Clear? Any questions? No? No questions? Okay.
What are the conditions are when the conditions are failed to the transaction, but we want to again execute it again.
Executing in the sense? No, that we can't do.
We have to
Okay.
again one more time.
One more time you have to execute. Okay. If the trigger transaction has been failed, we have to track where the transaction has been failed. We have to reprocess those records again. Okay. Clear? Now, this is the concept of trigger.new. Is the trigger.new context variable here. Clear up to now? Now make a note of this one. Trigger.new. Trigger.new is a context variable which holds the current context records in the form of list collection. Syntax. is the subject data type, that is trigger dot. For example, is the we don't need to define the trigger dot new context variable which is maintaining by Salesforce automatically as part of triggers. Done? Now, so now just to give some 2 to 3 lines of space over here because I would like to give some more information after that trigger dot code. Okay, just give some 2 to 3 lines of space over. Next. Next one. Trigger dot code. So what exactly the trigger dot code? What is the use? Now let's see practically use this. So let me take a scenario. I'm having an object. Okay. For example, I'm having an account object. So this is my account object that we have right now. Inside my object, I'm having 4 columns are available: ID, name, rating, industry. I'm having few records inside this. Okay, I'm having few records. First record ID is 001, some 234. Name is some Ram, and the rating value some heart. Industry is some finance. Second record 001, some 345. This is some Suresh. Rating value some warm. Industry banking. 001 456 some Sampath. Rating value cold is some bank. 001 267 this is some Kiran. We are having the value some warm, and this is some insurance. Okay. So these are the 4 records are available inside my app. I'm having that 4 records: Ram, Suresh, Sampath, and then Kiran. Okay. So now these are the 4 records are available inside my app. Now my requirement is whenever the user is going to be updating the records. Okay. Whenever the user is updating the records, I want to make sure whatever the banking industry accounts are there, the rating value should be always hot. That means I want to make sure for the banking customers, I want to give some more priority. Because banking customers are very valuable customers to me. We are generating more revenue from the banking customers, so that I need to give more rating to the banking customers. I want to make sure that, okay, I want to make sure that the banking industry account record should have the rating value as always hard. For that one, to validate that, I would like to write some trigger here now. That's what we can do in this case. Generally, how can we update this record? Update, okay, then how can we do that? Okay, fetch the data from the object, okay. Okay, that what needs to be done in this case? So now in this case, for example, to make sure that, okay, to make sure whether this industry banking records are having the rating value as hot or not, to validate that, I'm going to be using a trigger. In front of my object, I'm going to be adding a trigger. I'm adding a trigger. I'm adding a trigger. So now which will be available on my object account, which will get filed on before update. I'm having a trigger event that is called as before update. Now it is having this event. My trigger is going to be firing on before update event, which is having some business logic inside this. Which is having some business logic inside this to validate whether this banking industry accounts are having rating value or not. I'm having the business logic inside this. Which is having some business logic in order to validate whether this banking industries are having that rating value as hot or not. To validate that one, we have written some business logic inside this. So now my setup is ready to protect the data from the records, okay, with invalid values. Now tell me, how can we update the records generally? How to update the records? I want to update the records. I want to update the records. I want to collect the banking industry accounts. I want to update those values, rating values equals to some part. I want to commit the changes back to the database. Then what we can do? First of all, we have to write SQL query, right? Now, for example, here I'm writing the SQL query here. So I'm preparing an SQL query. I'm writing an SQL query right now. I'm preparing an SQL query. So what is that query in this case now? Okay, select ID, name, rating, bank. Right. So now only the banking industry accounts I would like to fetch from the object. Remaining records I don't want. Okay, remaining records I don't want. I'm fetching only the banking industry account records, which needs to be get updated. Okay, I'm writing this SQL query, and then we are going to be collecting the data here. Through this SQL query, we can able to fetch the information from that object. I'm fetching the data from this object. I'm executing this SQL query. I'm writing this SQL query. Through this SQL query, we can able to get the data. What records it will return right now? Okay, 2 records will be getting returns to you, because these are the 2 records are there which are having that industry equals to banking. These are the two records which are having the interest equals to bank. Two records will be written by my SO cable. Now these are the two records are there. So now my SO cable query is going to be returning this two records to me. Once the records are available, then what needs to be done then? Okay, I have a listed collection, I have stored the records then. Okay. Okay, we need to write a for loop, right? Okay. Then what we need to assign? Assign the value as rating equals to R. So that here whatever the records are available, for these records I would like to assign the rating value as R. So because these two are the banking records here. So now here I am going to be collecting the banking records. For these records I am going to be changing this rating value as R. I am assigning the values. I am changing these values to R. I am assigning the value to R. That means what? Whatever the records are available, this is the actual records we have collected from the database. Once the records have been getting collected, then I am going to be assigning the values to these records like this. Okay, I am assigning the values. Assign the values. I am assigning the values for these records right now. So now for this rating field, I am going to be assigning the values as hard. Once the values have been getting assigned, then I am going to be inserting the record into the object here. Now here from there we can able to insert the record into that object. Okay, we are trying to be inserting the record into that object right now. In this case, what is the statement we need to use now? Normal. Collected the record, assign some new values, we need to pass. Update statement. Okay, I'm updating the records back to the actual object. So now tell me here in this case, okay, whenever I'm updating the record, okay, we have two collections. Now tell me from these two, which one is old data, which one is new data. Above is the old data, okay. This one is new data. Now in this case, whenever you are updating the records, you are having that old collection, new collection, old context, new context. This is called as trigger.old. Okay, this is called as trigger.old. Now, can you store this data inside a map collection? Yes, sir. Why? To store the records inside the map collection, what we need? Do we have ID for this record? Yes. Can you store inside the map or not? Yes. So this is called as record.old. Okay. So now in this case, what are these records? This is the latest context. So this is called as trigger.new. Can you store this data inside this map collection? Yes. This is having the trigger.new map. This is the concept of context variables. Okay, clear? So now here in this case, whenever I'm going to be updating the records, here we'll be having two contexts will come into the picture. Okay, old context, new context are available. So this is the trigger.old, which will be holding the previous context record. Nothing but old values are available here. Okay. So now in this case, we can able to store this old collection data in the form of map also, because it is having the record ID is available, so that we can store this data inside that map collection also, where the ID will be the key and the whole record will be the value. So in this case, once the records are available with me, we are going to be assigning the new value for that field values based on the required conditions. So you will be having the new collection is also available, which is having the latest information. So now we are collecting the older data. We are going to be assigning some new values based on the conditions. We are going to be assigning some new values for those records. So that which is called as the current context here, nothing but new context, which is called as trigger.new map.
So it is also old because ID is already.
See, upon updating the record, ID will not be getting created again. ID will be same.
So it is old.
Why old?
Because when we creating a new object.
A record will have only one ID at a time, not multiple.
That's why. For example, I'm a old person. I'm wearing a new dress. So wearing a new dress, but I'm the old.
Looking like as new, right?
But
Then,
not new. It's
no.
old person.
Now, even though the old person, the people are looking at the dress first, right? Which is a new dress. Okay. Now you'll be having some new values are available.
Okay.
Suppose, for example, you come to your scenario. If you are wearing a new dress, okay, with your suit, and if you're coming to the class, the people will say you here. So you are looking like new completely. Okay? Something special. Record may be old. Okay, record may be the existing one, but it is having some new values. Okay, record will be having some new values. So that to get this new values, we are using the trigger.new context. Old context is also there, new context is also there, which will be having the previous data and the current data is also there.
Any value is updating, that's
Right. Yes, right. Okay. So whenever we are creating some new records or whenever you are assigning some new values upon updation, you will be having the trigger.new context. Now, here comes a small question. Now, for example, I'm having the insert operation. Okay, I'm having the insert operation. In this insert operation, we are having two scenarios: before, after. So now in before insert, can I use trigger.new context? Before insert, I'm inserting new. So new records will be there inside the trigger.new. Now, for example, here, can I use trigger.new map over there? Why? ID is not available. It's a common question in every interview. Can we use trigger.new map in the before insert event or not? Before insert event, we can't use trigger.new map because records are not having ID, so we can't store inside that map collection. So that here, in that when coming to trigger context variables, the context variables will be available only in some events. Now let's see those events. Okay, before that, let me give the note fine for this one. Understood this concept now? Trigger.old in trigger.new. Okay. So now trigger.old. Now make a note of this. Trigger.old is a context variable which holds the previous context records in the form of a list collection. List collection. Syntax. List of the data type. Trigger.old. For example, list of just to give 2 lines of space here. Trigger.old map or new map first. It is a context variable which holds the current context records in the form of map collection, where record ID will be the key and the whole record will be the value. Map of ID comma yes subject data type. Trigger dot new map. For example, map of ID comma next. Trigger dot code map. It is a context variable which holds the previous context record in the form of map collection, where record ID will be the key and the whole record will be the map. Map of ID comma yes subject data. These are the four context variables. We are going to add some time zone. हाँ हाँ बोल space. Done? No. So let's come to that trigger dot new. Now tell me, at what events you can use this trigger dot new context variable? Before insert, before update. That means we can able to use the trigger dot new context variable in insert operation and in update operation. In both insert, update operations, we can use the trigger dot new context variable. Now, can you use this trigger dot new context variable inside your delete operation? No. Why? Because delete operation means what? We are removing the existing record. So there is no concept of new again. So in this case, trigger dot new context variable can be accessible only in insert operation and update operation. Okay. Now, make a note of this one. Trigger dot new context variable can be accessible only in insert and update operations. It can't be available in delete operation. Depends upon the event on which you are firing the trigger, we have to use respective context variable. In that event, what context variables are available, we have to use. Done? Next, second one. Trigger dot old. Now tell me what events it will be available to you. Trigger dot old context variable is available in what kind of events? Update and delete event. Okay, update and delete event. Now tell me, can you use this trigger dot old in the form of insert operation? In insert, what we are going to do? Everything inserting newly. There is no concept of old. So that here a trigger dot old will be accessible only in two events. So one is in update and delete events. Okay. This context variable will be available in update and delete operations. It can't be accessible in insert operation. Next, trigger dot new map, where we can use this trigger dot new map. In what events you can use? Insert and update. Insert in, especially when in insert. Before insert or after insert? After insert. Because in the before insert we don't have record ID. So that here trigger dot new map context variable can be accessible in after insert and in update operations. Okay. This context variable will be used or will be accessible in after insert and update operations. It will not be available in before insert, as the record doesn't have the ID. trigger dot old map. Before before update, before delete. That means in update operation and delete operation. This context variable will be available in both update and delete operation. It will not be available in insert operation. Okay. So these are the total 10 trigger context variables available in Salesforce. Next, trigger bulkification. But already told you from the beginning of the collection classes, from the ORM concept, we keep on discussing the bulkification process. Don't perform the operation on each and every record separately. Always group them to a collection and then perform the operations by using the collections. Okay, by using the insert operation or update or whatever the DML operations you want to do. Done. Next one. So now let's see the trigger bulkification. What exactly the trigger bulkification then? What did you understood with this word trigger bulkification?
One or more than one records you can operate every one time
Okay.
using the collection.
Okay. How can we do that? For example, assume that. So this is the scenario. Let me take this scenario here. For example, I'm inserting only one record. I'm inserting only one record. So now I'm inserting only one record here right now. I'm inserting the record. Upon inserting the record, okay, my trigger will fire or not? Yes. My trigger will fire. It will move the record to that temporary place. Okay. To hold this record, it is creating the context variable called as trigger.new. In that one, it is holding the record. It is validating the data. It is sending the response back. Okay. That means my trigger has been filed, validated, and then sending the response. Okay. It will be deciding whether record can be acceptable or record can be rejected. Okay, these for one record. Suppose if I'm having the concept of multiple records, then how many times my trigger will fire? How? How can we make the trigger to be fired one time?
We take a list and we use the for loop. So for loop verify each and every record.
Okay.
The and after that trigger will completing the operation.
Okay. That means what? Even though you may be inserting either one record, even though you are inserting multiple records also, don't make the trigger to be filed on each and every record separately. Because first record, trigger has find, validated the data, inserting the record. And second record, trigger has been filed, validating the data, sending that. Don't do like that here, because if the number of records are more, trigger will file more number of times, which will be impacting on the application performance. So that even though you are passing bulk records also, make the trigger to be filed only once. But trigger should file only once, collect all the records, storing inside the collection. What is that collection? Trigger.new. Once all the records are available inside the collection, iterate the collection from starting to ending by using enhanced for loop, and then validate the data by rating the proper conditions, and then you can decide you can accept the record or you can reject the record. Okay, so that in this case, instead of filing the trigger for each and every record separately, make the trigger bulkified. That means here, even though I'm inserting multiple records, even though I'm deleting multiple records, even though I'm updating multiple records, my trigger should file only once. Once the trigger has to file, collect all the records, place inside the collection, then do the validations of these records here. Further, it is maintaining the collections inside this. These are not only the single variable, these are holding the collection of records. Okay, so in this case, please use that context variables like as trigger.new, trigger.old, trigger.new map, trigger.old map. Use these context variables, collect all the records at a time, hold inside the collection, iterate the collection from starting to ending, perform the required validation, and then decide record can be acceptable or record can be rejected. Okay, so that here we are using that concept called as bulkification process. Okay, not only performing the normal DML operations bulkified, triggers also we need to make it bulkified. Triggers should file only once. If anybody asks in the entry point of view, okay, if I'm creating some 10 records, how many to 5 times the trigger will file? Trigger will be filing how many times? Only once. That means here we have to make the trigger, we have to write the code in such a way the trigger should not file multiple times, trigger has to file only once. Now tell me how can we achieve this one? How can we achieve this?
Use collection.
Okay.
Context variables.
Okay. Then tell me. What we can do. For example, let me explain the scenario. I'm inserting the record into my account object. My requirement is here, I may be inserting 1 record, 10 record, 1000 record, it's my own choice. I will insert the records. Upon inserting that, the trigger has to file, it has to collect all the records, it has to validate whether the record is having the industrial field value or not. If the record is not having industrial field value, simply it has to cancel the whole transaction. Then tell me how can we implement that? Whenever I'm inserting the new record into that object, where this record will store, in which context variable? Trigger.new. Okay. Now here I'm having my trigger. So now which is having the trigger that is called as account trigger, which will be available on account object. I want to find the trigger on when before insert event. That means before inserting the record, I want to validate that information. So now we have to write the conditions to write the business logic on preparing the context variable first. Trigger dot is insert and trigger dot is before. Okay, that means here whether the trigger has been filed because of before insert event or not. Now, if yes, then what records you are trying to insert? These are the records I'm trying to be inserting. Where this record will store inside that? Trigger dot new context variable. Trigger dot new. Trigger dot new is what? List the collection. List of what? Why account? Because trigger is an account object. So it will be holding the record, which is called as list of account. I'm storing that. LST account. Now, how many records are available inside this one? 2 records are available. How to validate these 2 records now? Using for loop. Now tell me how to write that code here. For for each and every account record, ACC from LSC accounts. Now, then what we can do here? I want to make sure whether this record is having that industry field value or not. If it is equals to null, I want to show that message. What we can do? If ACC dot industry equals to null, or ACC dot industry equals to empty, then I want to show that error message to the user. We can able to write the error message code. Okay, clear? That means what? I'm inserting some 10 records. Even though I'm inserting 10 records, the trigger will be getting 5. It will collect all the records storing inside the trigger.new. From there, we can able to return. Okay. Now, tell me any chance to optimize this code now. Right. In this case, what happened? Trigger.new is a context variable which is already holding the account records. Again, I'm creating one more collection. That means again, I'm going to be saving same data one more copy. It's a waste of resources. It's a waste of memory. So that here simply we can able to write the trigger.new inside that file. That's it. This is the concept of trigger bulkification. Okay. Even though you may be inserting 1,000 records, trigger.new will collect all the 1,000 records placed inside the collection. It will iterate that, validate each and every record automatically. Okay. Clear? Every trigger should be a Bulkify trigger as part of implementation. Don't target for single record processing, target for bulk record processing. Okay. Every trigger should be a Bulkify trigger. Clear? Now, so this is the second step. First step is trigger. Second step is context variable. Third one is bulkification process. And the fourth step, we have to do that required validation. These are the steps we have to follow upon implementing the triggers. Okay? Now, make a note here. Bulkification of triggers.
Sir, whenever you use any collection, for example, this collection, we use the trigger.
Sorry?
Whenever we use the collection for storing the data, that time we should use the trigger.
Yes, because in our normal programming we can't use. These context variables can be accessible within the trigger only, from starting to ending of the trigger pattern, not outside.
That trigger is nothing but the magic variable.
Yes, it's a magic table. Okay. Now, the bulkification of triggers. Upon using the triggers to validate the records or to perform the operations, don't find the trigger for each record separately. Don't find the trigger for each record separately. Make the trigger bulkified. That is, trigger should find only once for the multiple records. Hence, we can improve the application performance. Hence, we can improve the application performance. We can achieve the trigger bulkification with the help of trigger context variables and enhance the for loop. Okay. And tomorrow we'll see the types of triggers. It's a simple feature, okay, just a 2 minutes topic. And then we'll see the ways to create the trigger. And then we'll see the trigger practical implementation. Okay, how to implement, okay, the practical through the triggers.